Hi, this is Rick Kelly at Fuel Cycle, and you're listening to Finding the Edge. Hey everyone, this is Rick Kelly with Fuel Cycle, and this is another episode of Finding the Edge. Today it's my pleasure to welcome Jason Matthews, who is the Vice President of Research and Digital Marketing for Game Show Network, where he focuses primarily on audience and market research insights. Previously, he has held market research executive roles at Ovation TV and Equal. Is that right? Digital Media Network. Not poring over TV ratings data, he's a widely produced and published playwright and can be found running the streets of Santa Monica, California, with a social fitness group, Electric Light Crew. That's like some of the most LA things I've ever heard, Jason. So,
well, I was born and raised in LA, so It makes sense that my adult life was very of the city.
Yeah.
But thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. So you're a playwright, in addition to being a researcher.
In a way former life, I did that, and now my work still sort of seems to be out there. But yeah.
Wait, so your work's still out there? Like, is there anything I can watch or any play I can go see that you read?
Nothing you can see. You can find my stuff online in certain places. There is a theater company in Santa Monica called the Ruskin Group Theater. They've been here 15, 20 years now. And I got started there doing one acts with them. And then I was their writer-in-residence for a couple of years. And I premiered a full length with them. And then I produced a hit show. Do you know that movie Sideways?
Yeah.
It's based on a novel. And I'm friendly with the novelist, whose name is Rex Pickett. And we convinced him to adapt his original novel for the stage. And we both premiered that show at the Ruskin. I produced that. And then that went on to do a run in San Diego, run in London, and then a run in San Francisco. And I think they're working on getting it to Broadway. So that was all stuff I would do in my off time when I wasn't doing market research and television research, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you got to have a side hustle.
That's amazing. So you're doing this in conjunction with being a researcher.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So so you're interested in theater and television. How'd you get into research?
By accident, I suppose.
Like everyone, right?
I like everyone. Well, I guess there's some people that grow up going, I really want to stare at an Excel spreadsheet. That's really what I want my life to be. I was always a film geek growing up, poring over the IMDb just all the time. And my parents were really into movies. That's what we watched all the time. And I went to film school, graduated with a bachelor's in film studies at UC Santa Barbara, and then came back out to LA. And I randomly got a job as a coordinator for a company called OTX, which eventually got bought out by Ipsos. And they were the company that was not only just doing strong quantitative research, but they were specifically doing those research film screenings. Where you recruit the audience to watch the film, and it's in production, and they fill out a card at the end, and then a group stays on, focus group, there's a moderator. And a gentleman named Kevin Getz, who's a world famous moderator for research screenings. He just kind of took me under his wing a little bit, and I was a coordinator for those screenings for quite a bit of time. This was before they got bought out by Ipsos and so on. Did that for a while, and then I moved on to other jobs in the industry, but eventually found my way to a company called Equal. And what Equal did was build destination websites for brands and celebrities and social media influencers. Where it's kind of like a hub and spoke model, where what we did was we took the audiences they had on various social platforms, and we would build content on the websites and drive people to the website from social to consume the content and participate in branded experiences. And then you use the data to help understand more about the audience for that particular person, and that helps you to narrow cast and optimize the content and so on. And I ran business intelligence for them for a bunch of years. And then I was brought on to Ovation, which is an arts network. And I ran research for them for 3 years, focusing on TV ratings and audience segmentation and so on. And then now I'm a game show.
There you go.
That's how we got here.
And here we are. And you are a podcast first, because you are lots of the time we're talking with other technology companies in the research space. But you're actually the first Fuel Cycle client and customer that's come on the podcast. So welcome.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah. So sounds like a fascinating background and everything, and really kind of it's helpful to understand for, I think, our audience to understand what your role is day to day, because media research is so different than what a company like financial services is going to do. Different things matter. I assume it's some of it's like sales rating, production support. What is it, or sales enablement type things? What types of things are you using research for at Game Show Network?
It's a great question. A research department at television network, I've always felt is kind of like a service center. You can think of ourselves like a mechanic, right? And every single department in the company comes to us and says, there's a problem with X, and we need to understand why to solve that problem. What can you help us to understand? And usually you're trying to help them understand something about how our audience is behaving. And we have a suite of tools, mostly syndicated research tools that are in the quant space that help us understand the who, the what, the where, and the when. But what isn't there is the why. And ultimately, that's my job, is to take the data and try to understand the why. So, for example, with the programming department, what they really want to understand is how to interpret our ratings. Who is watching us? When are they watching? When have they stopped watching? How long are they watching? Why or why not? What could improve our ratings, and where we could extend our brand to bring in new audiences or curating, cultivating this existing one. And then in the marketing space, you're trying to figure out where those audiences live, what they consume, how they learn about new information, how they can be convinced of something to test and consume that product. And then for our distribution department, this is the group that works with cable providers to actually get subscription access to our network, to our customers. We work with DirecTV and AT&T and so on.
Uh-huh.
They want to understand, locally, regionally, market and nationally, who our audience is and how are they watching and how does that compare to other networks and so on. So, and then I work with the finance department to understand how the ratings, run with our ad sales, and how that impacts a myriad of different revenue pieces.
It sounds very busy.
We keep a full schedule.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious. So you've had this background in media research for a while.
Yeah.
What have you seen kind of change and evolve in media research over the last decade or so?
I think the thing that I've seen the most happen is that focus on research has gotten much more granular, right? And Nielsen really started that, right? You only really had 10 or 15, even 20 years ago, a very select amount of ratings information or audience demographics that you could study, because there really wasn't really widespread opportunities to know where they are, learn who they are, what they want. And there's been a lot of service tools and companies that have come through over the last decade that help you to understand key and specific things about who your audience is, and how your business can improve the relationship with their audience. And so we used to only, on the TV side, we used to only focus on program ratings. So that's the minutes of a television program, full stop. Like if you air it from 9 to 9:30, it's every minute of that half an hour. But then Nielsen just discovered commercial ratings, where you could segment out the viewers that were watching the minutes of your program versus the minutes of your commercial rating. Sure. Then when we started having DVR and TiVo services, then you could study how they're time shifting their viewing from live to the first 3 days, the first 7 days, and then you could start thinking about how they index as a consumer. Well, then now you're able to fuse that indexing information with ratings data, and so on down the line. And on the qualitative side, I think that's where it's been the most exciting updates, because for decades, the television and film space was really focused on very traditional focus group work. You go to, Chicago, and you recruit 30 people and you put them in a room and you watch something and they have a dial in their hands. And afterwards, you keep 10 of them and talk to them about the show, and they try to give you some information, and then you try to make hay of it. And unfortunately, what happens when you do that is that the work of dozens and dozens and dozens of very smart, strategic, and passionate people gets whittled down to what, like 10 people in Chicago think about your finished work. And that's not a perfect way to do business. It's not a perfect way to handle creative development. It's not a perfect way to understand who your audience is.
Yeah. If you were to be prescriptive about like integrating qual and quant like kind of together, what would you say should be done? Because obviously there's a role for focus groups and for that qual component, right? How do you think about integrating those in your work today?
I think you need two things. I think you need scale, and I think you need precision targeting. Right on the scale side, I can't leave it. If I have 4 focus groups that are in Chicago, let's just keep that example going, and I recruit 30 people each, I only have 120 people that actually saw the program and used the dialer. It's a fairly small sample size, and if you only keep 10 in each group, that's only 40 people that are actually talking to you to give you qualitative insights. When you have 40 people, a very small selection of them can skew your returns.
Sure.
You know, they can try to produce something in a room, and suddenly the people behind the glass go, "Oh wow, now a quarter of this audience doesn't like character A." Well, that's not necessarily the thing you should change about your show. So you do need to have enough people where you can segment your audience by various groups and to understand, what did this group like? What did that group like? Well, what group matters to us in priority order? And then on the precision targeting side, this is sort of speaks to the reason Game Show Network got into the insight community business is, I think you need to have a healthy mix of talking to who are your actual customers and who are prospective customers.
Sure.
Right. So the other problem with traditional focus group work when you're in television is the people that you're put in a room may not have ever seen your television network. They may not like the vertical that you're in, whether it's general entertainment or game shows or sports or music or what have you. And that's not always helpful to understand how to drive your core audience.
Sure. Because sometimes like you have to have the people who are actually going to use your product or show.
Yeah.
Right? And then also you have to have people who are open to using your product or show. Right.
That's right.
No matter what it is.
Yeah. Because when you're looking at your audience on a television side, what we do is we break it out into heavy viewers, medium viewers, and light viewers. And you always want to work to move them up in their scale, right? You want to turn light viewers into medium viewers and medium viewers into heavy viewers. And with heavy viewers, you just want to continue to curate their experience because they're going to give you a base of rating support. The light viewers, though, tend to be an extremely high percentage of your actual audience.
Sure.
Right? Because most viewers nationwide, they'll test and try a lot of networks, but in a very brief amount of time. You'd like to know what they generally think. But if you're only attracting your light viewers, you're going to get away from providing an experience in an environment that has already brought in those big fans of your channel. And so you have to make sure you're listening to the people that love you and the people that are like, I'm not so sure, and then you can find a mix of experiences that can benefit both sides.
Gotcha. That's helpful. So really, like, I can kind of summarize some of what you said. A lot of it comes down to like getting the sampling frame right, especially like in a smaller audience. It's the sampling frame can have an outsized influence on the overall results and direction that you take.
Yeah.
Does that sound fair? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. The one of the main reasons that we got into Game Show got into the insight community space is I would get tasked with putting a panel together to test a show or a concept or a title. These would be sort of ad hoc qual research events. And so I go to various qual companies that could do survey work. And I'd say, well, I want my N to be 500, 750, or 1,000, whatever. And they go, that's great, but your IR is phenomenally small because what you're looking for is like 1/3 heavy viewers, 1/3 medium viewers, 1/3 light and non. And it's very hard to find those heavy and medium viewers. And so you'd have like a 1 to 5% instance rate, and the cost of the individual survey would balloon.
Oh, it's exorbitant, right?
Yeah.
It's non-linear expense.
That's right. And that's the key. Is trying to find those people that you actually want to talk to is so difficult. And so if you have an insight community where you can keep that group of people who actually follow and love your channel and watch you every day, it is invaluable to be able to have that group isolated in one place and be able to talk to them on a regular basis. And really that's I think the best advancement I've seen in qualitative research over the last decade. Is that on the quant side, at this point, I can measure almost anything. I can measure almost anything on the rating side, on the social side, and on the web side. I can tell you literally 1 million metrics. And that's great. It's problematic in and of itself sometimes because it's sort of paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
But on the qual side, to be able to find your biggest fans and talk to them on a regular basis is great.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
That's good for me. But what types of research are you doing? Like, so you're adding color to a lot of like quant, like the very like rich data sets that you have. What types of things do you end up doing?
I would say the majority of it is working to make sure that the programming that we're putting in front of our audience is something that they're going to be excited about and interested in, and that expands their view and favorable impression of our network. So we like to show them pilots of shows we're considering picking up. We like to show them programs we're considering acquiring to air on our network in a syndicated way. We're showing them versions of shows that are going to be launching soon to say, we did this, and then you gave us this information. Well, here's a new version of it. How do you think we've improved the work? As we're considering the talent that we're going to put on our air, we like to get a sense if our audience knows who they are, likes them, would consider watching them on our network, feel they're a right fit for us, how they feel about them when they see them in various spaces. And that helps us to understand how we market them, how we build a PR campaign around that talent. Also helps us to understand how we're going to market the show they're going to be on. Mm-hmm. We'd like to get a sense of how they feel about where the industry's moving and what they're watching. It helps us to better understand what our competition is. And we'll test marketing campaigns too. Here's the trailer for this show. What sparks to you? Do you remember the day and date of the premiere? Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the graphics? Do you think about the title treatments? How do you think about the pace? We really want to use our community to get ahead of what would make a great television show for them.
Gotcha.
And in all the ways that you would build a show.
So it's very flexible. Like it's kind of Swiss Army knife.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's curious. And I'm interested in your thoughts on if you were going to kind of project out, say, over the next 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. How do you think media research in general is going to change in the near future, if at all?
On the quant side, that's a sticky wicket right now, mm-hmm. because there's a lot of television viewing, and however you want to define the word television, that is kind of a murky gray area. Mm-hmm. You see that in Netflix's refusal to release ratings data.
Yeah.
So networks that have licensed their content to Netflix don't have any idea, no insight whatsoever into how their shows are being consumed, who's watching them, how many people, and whether you're watching it on a tablet in a TV everywhere environment, whether you're watching it on an app on your phone or tablet or desktop, whether you're watching time-shifted viewing, there's a big question of sort of total audience. How do you ladder up mm-hmm. all of the disparate audiences in the different environments they can consume your content? How do you roll it up into one number?
Gotcha.
That's the biggest problem on the television quant side. On the qual side, I think we need to figure out how to properly judge the impact of social media. There's certain shows that have been quite successful as a result of social media. 2 examples I can tell you are Scandal and Pretty Little Liars. Mm-hmm. These are both shows that have cultivated a very strong Twitter audience, right?
Well, when you have Michelle Obama tweeting about Scandal,
right?
Of course,
yeah. And so if that becomes a question of, is Twitter driving the ratings of those shows, or the ratings of those shows driving the Twitter conversation, and what can be gleaned for future shows who want to emulate that experience? And I think we've learned a lot of good and bad lessons from those isolated examples. And I think social media can be a wind tunnel sometimes, mm-hmm. and separating how people feel about your show in mass there versus the actual people watching television. There needs to be a better balance of listening to both sides.
Gotcha. So you feel like the social media it ends up amplifying strong opinions. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. It's public, uh-huh. right? So any executive can go on their Twitter feed and search for the name of your show, and right. And so what happens is, a research department will get an email that says, these 20 people don't like the show. What does this mean? Is this why the ratings were bad? Mm-hmm. Or, oh, there was only this many tweets versus that many tweets last week. Is that why the rating was up or down? And so trying to understand the relationship between the conversation happening about your show and the actual viewership uh-huh. is curious. And then better understanding where and how people want to watch TV.
Gotcha.
Whether it's they want to watch it on their mobile device, they want to watch it on an app, on their tablet, whether they're going to continue to watch in regular television. I think the key for us is, and any television network, not just Game Show Network, is providing a suite of opportunities for your audience to watch your programming and provide them an experience that they love. And the qualitative research speaks to that back piece. I actually think that every network is going to have an insight community inside of Timbers. Uh-huh. Because if you're not actually talking to your audience, it's impossible to make great decisions about what to provide for them.
Yeah. Do you mind just on the topic of the insight community? say it is definitely a growing trend. And as we're recording this podcast, I think it's end of January 2018, and we just saw a new
2019
or 2019 a new grit report come out, and you can see like the trend in Insight community utilization continues to grow.
Yeah.
What motivated you in particular to kind of seek out Insight community? So it was like understanding, having a faster way. Or a faster way to communicate with your audience. What other things went into your kind of decision-making process?
Our specific audience. Television is always trying to attract a younger audience. That's why whenever you read an article on, say, Deadline.com, everyone says, what's the 18 to 49 rating, right? Or what's the 25 to 54 rating? And those are the age groups that advertisers want, right? And every network wants. We're not excluded to that. We want 18 to 49. We want 25 to 54. But the thing that not a lot of networks like to share is that a good percentage of every single television network's audience is a 55 plus audience or a 35 plus audience. And what we noticed when we did a psychographic segmentation of our audience about a year before we started our community is that the people that are watching us most frequently, the people that feel the most passionately towards us and whose sort of need state when they sit down to watch television align with the programming that we offer, they tend to be 40 plus.
Gotcha.
And that is that group that, let's call it 40 to 99. So let's not leave anybody out, right? You can't really find them on social media as easily as you can 18 to 35-year-olds, 18 to 34-year-olds. And we realized because those are our core viewers, those are the viewers that we know will be there every day. It was crucial that we understood how they felt and what they were watching and what the kinds of programs that they wanted us to make for them. And we needed to be able to hear from them on a regular basis. And when I spoke to survey companies, it was really hard for them to find those groups in mass. And what happened was that I've been familiar with the Insight community space for years. I actually worked at a company called Passenger,
which is Fuel Cycle rename.
That's right. Yeah. I worked there for a brief bit, almost a decade ago. I feel like, and I worked on an Insight community for a television network. So I've known about it for a long time. And when I got out of sort of client-side market research, or actually sort of service-side client market research, and went into an actual television network at Ovation, I pitched Insight community. I was like, you guys are a niche network. You have a very affluent and very specific audience that is unique and different than most networks. You need a community to help better understand how to service that. And it was just not the right time and not the right regime to put that in place. And then when I got to Game Show Network, I always had the back of my mind, I'd love to start this. And for the game show audience, I think it'd be perfect. And then there was an executive at my company who came to me one day and said, I'd really like to talk to our audience. And I was like, yeah, we can get a survey going. He goes, no, I'd like to talk to them on the phone. Is there any way to find like a dozen people in various cities across the country and like set up a way to regularly talk to them face to face or via phone? And I was like, I'll do you one better. Let me put together an Insight community. And I said, here's what it'll be. It'll be that exact idea, but instead of 12 of them, I'll put in 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 of them. And I will be able to actually talk to them. And they'll be able to talk back. And we'll be able to get their responses in real time. And we'll be able to track longitudinally how they're feeling about us from one quarter to the next. And everyone thought that was a great idea. And what we decided is to do something a little bit different than I think most companies do when they're recruiting their community audience. We didn't want a panel. We didn't want to buy a national sample base.
Sure.
We wanted our actual viewers. So instead of buying an audience or recruiting an audience through a vendor,
like paid acquisition.
Correct.
Yep.
We made a commercial for the community, like a promo, and we ran it on our network for like a 3-month period of time. And it was basically, are you a GSN super fan? Then we want you. Come to GSN TV Nation to help us build a better game show network. And we set qualifiers in the recruit that said you had to have access to us. You have to be watching us X amount of times. You have to feel an affinity toward us at an X level. And we had, percentages of which age groups we wanted so that it mimicked the linear ratings and audience demographics that we were seeing, and we were able to do that. And the promo attracted a quite a big group of people to come to the community and sign up. And from day one, we were talking to our actual viewers. And there's a lot of statistics that have been useful with our network and our KPIs and success metrics for us. But I think the one that I'm most proud of for GSN TV Nation is that 85% of community members are daily viewers of Game Show Network.
That's incredible.
So when I put together a report from a survey on the community, and my head of programming or my head of finance or my head of ad sales or my head of the network says, and you're sure our actual viewers did this, I can say 85% of them watch this network every day.
Right. I mean, these are your most valuable
audiences,
right? Yeah.
That's right. And the other 15% watches like weekly, monthly. But they're viewers. There's no one in the community who doesn't like GSN, who doesn't watch GSN, who doesn't have access to GSN. They may watch us at different frequencies, and that is something that we like to segment and learn more about. They are all our viewers.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Any particular research stories or success stories that you'd like to share coming away from? I guess you've been running GSN TV Nation for how long now? It's been
over a year.
It's been over a year. Any highlights from the year?
Actually, yeah. So last spring, we had a suite of pilots that we were considering, and we tested 5 of them over like a 2-month period of time, and we weren't quite sure which of them were going to hit, and we weren't quite sure which one of them we were going to pick up. And we tested all 5, and we had question sets for each of them. We put together the data, and there was one show in particular that seemed to pop, and it seemed to pop in very specific places. And we were like, I think this show might actually work. And it was a sizzle reel pilot. It didn't have the actual talent that ended up being the host. And so we picked the show up and we shot one, and we said, all right, guys, you saw a sizzle reel, like a 7-minute version that didn't look anything like the version we're about to put on the air. What do you think of it now? And the score is dramatically improved. We tested the marketing of the show, and we learned a lot about how to optimize the marketing for the show. And we made it our signature series of 2018, and it became a big hit for us. And we felt confident that the show was going to hit because they responded positively to the sizzle pilot. They responded even more positively to the actual show pilot. They liked the talent. We tested the talent independent of the show that we were going to hire, and they liked that person. They liked the marketing assets, and the composition of the audience of the show when the ratings came out was almost 1-to-1 to the composition of the people taking the survey and how they felt too.
That's amazing.
That was really impressive. And then separate from that, there was a second show that we also put on the air that went through the same process. And while they liked the show, they liked it at sort of a lesser level. And we projected, as a result of the community's response to the show, that the ratings were likely to be, in a range of percent lower than the hit show I was just talking about. And that's actually what happened. So our community told us, this is how we feel about the thing you're about to do. We said, that's great. And they put it on, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Which was pretty great.
Yeah, that's a great couple stories to wrap up on. So usually I ask guests about a favorite restaurant in this favorite city or something like that. But I feel like it might be appropriate to ask you, what's your favorite TV show?
My favorite TV show currently on the air. So I'll tell you the show that I have stuck by for what feels like, I think, 15 actual years. I happen to have seen every single episode of Grey's Anatomy.
Oh my goodness.
And continue to watch that show every single week. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what that says about me, but I love that show. I really like Nailed It on Netflix. I think that show does a great job of listening to their audience and sort of pulling back the curtain on what it's like to make a cooking show. And it makes you feel like you're part of it. I would bet that was a show that got tested, and the audience said, I really feel like I'm learning something. I like the environment. So I really like that show. I mean, I loved Mad Men when that was on the air. Loved Breaking Bad when that was on the air.
So also good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I watch everything. You know, as a TV researcher, you have to be aware of what's happening on TV.
Mhm.
And I try to watch the pilots of as much of what gets put out as I possibly can.
Mhm.
So I've probably seen 10 pilots in the last month, just because I need to know what my audience may also be watching if they're not watching Game Show Network, and I want to understand how other networks are building their programming and what that may say about what our audience wants tomorrow as opposed to what they want today, because that will inform the game shows that we make for them in the future, and it ultimately is going to inform what I want to ask them about in the community.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, if you had advice to any aspiring media researchers, future media researchers, what would your advice be? One piece of advice.
Gosh, that's such a great question. I would say listen to your audience. Listen to what they seem to be telling you by way of the choices that they're making. If look for the patterns in their viewership, um, in these specific ways. Um, there's a great man who worked at Nielsen who taught me a lot about how to be a media researcher.
Mhm.
And he said, Jason, this is how you can judge an audience. And it doesn't ultimately matter if it's TV or if it's movies or if it's podcast or radio, whatever. You want to ask 3 questions. How many, how often, and how long? How many people are consuming, how often they're consuming, and when they're consuming, how much time are they spending doing the consumption? And if you're looking at those 3 buckets, you're going to ultimately know everything that you need to know about what your audience wants and how they feel about you as a brand.
Great advice.
Thank you.
Jason, thanks so much for coming down to the office
That was
today.
my pleasure. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
We'll talk to you again soon.